You keep saying you're exhausted. You tell everyone who will listen that you just want a break, that you need things to calm down, that all you're asking for is a little peace and quiet. You scroll past meditation apps and buy books about minimalism and talk about how one day soon, you're going to simplify your life. But then Monday comes and you're right back in it. The overbooked calendar, the crisis text at midnight that you absolutely have to respond to. The argument you could walk away from but won't. The problem that isn't yours but somehow becomes yours. And by Tuesday you're drowning again, complaining again, exhausted again. But here's the question you won't ask yourself. If you really wanted peace, why do you keep choosing chaos? Carl Jung spent decades studying the human psyche, and he discovered something that makes most people uncomfortable. We're not driven by what we consciously want. We're driven by what we unconsciously need. And if you examine your life honestly, if you look at the patterns that repeat despite your protests, you'll see something undeniable. You don't actually want peace. You're addicted to chaos. Not because you're broken, but because chaos serves a function in your psychology that peace can't fulfill. And until you understand what that function is, you'll keep manufacturing drama while swearing you hate it. Let me be clear about what I mean by chaos. I'm not talking about unavoidable difficulties. I'm not talking about genuine emergencies or circumstances outside your control. I'm talking about the self-created turbulence, the relationship you keep reviving even though it's clearly dead, the friend who exhausts you but you can't seem to distance yourself from, the job that's killing you but you won't quit, the packed schedule that leaves no room for rest but somehow you keep saying yes to more, the financial instability that you could address but don't, the family dynamics that drain you every single holiday but you keep showing up the same way expecting different results. This is manufactured chaos. And you're the manufacturer. Not consciously. You're not sitting around plotting ways to make your life harder, but unconsciously, systematically, you're choosing it. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you engage when you could ignore, every time you pick up someone else's emotional baggage and carry it like it's yours, every time you create a problem where there wasn't one because the silence felt too loud, you're feeding the chaos. And the reason you keep feeding it is because you're getting something from it. What are you getting? Let's start with the most common one. Identity. Who are you without problems to solve? Think about it. When someone asks how you are, what do you talk about? The drama, stress, the crisis you're managing, the impossible situation you're navigating. You've built your entire sense of self around being the person who handles things, who survives things, who endures things. Strip away the chaos, and what's left, you don't know, and not knowing is terrifying. So you keep the chaos alive because it keeps your identity alive. You're not just addicted to the drama, you're addicted to who you get to be inside the drama. Then there's purpose. Chaos gives you something to do. It fills your time, it occupies your mind, it provides endless tasks and problems and situations that need your attention. And this might sound ridiculous, but ask yourself, what would you do with yourself if nothing needed fixing? If no one needed saving, if there were no fires to put out? You'd have to face the emptiness underneath all the busyness. You'd have to sit with yourself. You'd have to feel what you've been too distracted to feel. And that's precisely what you're avoiding. The chaos isn't happening to you. It's protecting you from yourself. There's also intensity. You've confused intensity with aliveness. You think that if things aren't dramatic, they're not real. If there's no crisis, you're not living fully. If your nervous system isn't activated, you're somehow wasting your time. This is what happens when you've been in survival mode for so long that you don't remember what it feels like to simply exist without threat. Your baseline became emergency. And now, when things are calm, your body interprets it as wrong. It feels like something bad is about to happen. So you create something bad. You manufacture the threat. Because at least then you know what you're dealing with. At least then your hypervigilance makes sense. Jung would call this a neurosis, a pattern of behavior that once served a protective function but now operates automatically, compulsively, destroying the very peace you claim to want. And the thing about neuroses is that it's invisible to the person caught in it. You don't see yourself choosing chaos. You genuinely believe chaos is choosing you. You think you're unlucky or cursed or surrounded by difficult people, but the truth is simpler and harder. You're the common denominator. Every chaotic situation you find yourself in has one thing in common. You. Not because you're bad, but because you're unconscious. You're operating on autopilot, running programs installed years ago, repeating patterns you've never questioned. Let's talk about your relationships, because this is where the addiction becomes most obvious. You say you want someone stable, someone consistent, someone who doesn't create drama, and then you meet that person, and within weeks, you're bored. They text back too quickly. They're too available. They don't play games. There's no mystery, no chase, no emotional roller coaster. And so you either sabotage it directly by picking fights and creating distance, or you sabotage it indirectly by staying but feeling nothing, by comparing them to the person who made you crazy, by telling yourself that if it doesn't hurt, it must not be love. This is the addiction speaking. You've been conditioned to associate love with chaos, with volatility, with the high of reconciliation after the low of conflict, with the anxiety of not knowing where you stand, with the relief when they finally text back after ignoring you for days. You've experienced this pattern so many times that your nervous system literally craves it. It's like a drug. The chaos creates cortisol and adrenaline. The resolution creates dopamine, and your brain becomes dependent on that cycle. HealthyLove.com love. Steady love doesn't trigger that chemical cascade. So your brain interprets it as boring, as lacking, as not real, and you go searching for the chaos again. But here's what you need to understand. That chemical cascade isn't love. It's trauma response. It's your nervous system being activated by unpredictability and then relieved by temporary safety. It's not passion. It's and the fact that you can't tell the difference is exactly why you keep choosing chaos while claiming you want peace. You don't have a reference point for what peace actually feels like in a relationship. You've never experienced the sustained safety with someone. So when it's offered, you don't recognize it. You think something's wrong. You think something's missing. And you either leave or you destroy it from the inside. The same pattern plays out in every area of your life. You say you want financial stability, but you spend impulsively when you're stressed. You say you want a calm work environment, but you thrive on deadline pressure and last-minute emergencies. You say you want simple friendships, but you're drawn to people who need constant emotional management. You say you want free time, but you overcommit to everyone and everything. What you say and what you do are completely misaligned. And Jung would tell you that what you do is the truth. Your behavior reveals your unconscious desires, and unconsciously, you want chaos. Why? Because chaos keeps you from having to grow. It keeps you stuck in survival mode, where all that matters is getting through the day. There's no energy left for evolution, no space for introspection, no time for the deep work of becoming who you actually are. Chaos is a prison you've built yourself, and the bars are made of busyness, drama, crisis, and exhaustion. You stay locked inside complaining about the conditions while holding the key in your hand. The key is simple. Stop participating. Stop engaging. Stop choosing it. But simple doesn't mean easy, because choosing peace means facing everything chaos has been helping you avoid. What are you avoiding? For most people, it's one of three things: grief you've never processed, feelings you've never expressed, or a truth you're not ready to face. Maybe it's grief over a childhood you didn't get, over time you wasted, over people you lost, over versions of yourself you'll never be again. Maybe it's feelings of inadequacy, of rage, of loneliness so deep you're terrified it will swallow you. Maybe it's truth about a relationship that's dead, about a career that's wrong, about a life you're living for someone else's approval. What are buried is chaos. Keeps it buried. And you keep choosing chaos because you're not ready to dig it up. But here's what Jung understood that most people don't. The thing you're avoiding isn't going away. It's accumulating. It's growing stronger. It's waiting for you in the silence. And the longer you avoid it through chaos, the more power it gains over you. Eventually, and this is inevitable, the chaos stops working. The distractions stop distracting. The busyness stops numbing, and you're forced to face what you've been running from. The only question is whether you face it by choice or by crisis, because life has a way of forcing the confrontation if you won't choose it yourself. So let me ask you again, and this time, I answer honestly. Do you actually want peace? Or do you want to want peace? Do you want the reality of stillness, of space, of time, alone with your thoughts and feelings? Or do you just want the idea of it, the aesthetic of it, the way it sounds when you tell people? That's what you're working toward, because if you genuinely wanted peace, you'd be choosing it. You'd be saying no more often. You'd be ending relationships that create chaos. You'd be setting boundaries that protect your energy. You'd be simplifying instead of complicating. The fact that you're not doing these things isn't an accident. It's information, and the information is clear. You're not ready yet, and that's okay. But at least be honest about it. Here's where most people get defensive. They hear that they're choosing chaos, and they immediately start listing reasons why that's not true. They point to external circumstances. They blame other people. They explain why they can't just walk away or set boundaries or simplify their lives. And all of those explanations might be technically true, but they're also excuses. They're ways of maintaining the addiction while denying it exists, because admitting the addiction means admitting you have agency. And agency means responsibility, and responsibility means you can no longer play the victim of your own life. Jung believed that consciousness is everything, that the moment you become aware of a pattern, you gain the power to change it. But consciousness is painful. It requires you to see yourself clearly, without the stories you tell to make yourself feel better. It requires you to acknowledge that you've been complicit in your own suffering, that the chaos you complain about is chaos you've cultivated, that the exhaustion you wear like a badge is exhaustion you've chosen. And most people would rather stay unconscious than face that truth. They'd rather keep suffering and blaming than wake up and change. But you're still reading, which means some part of you, maybe a small part, maybe a hidden part, is ready to wake up. So let's talk about what waking up actually looks like. It starts with observation, not judgment, not immediate change, just observation. For the next week, I want you to notice every time you choose chaos, every time you engage with drama you could ignore, every time you say yes when no would serve you better, every time you manufacture a problem, every time you reach for your phone to check on something that doesn't matter. Just notice. Don't try to stop it. Just see it, because you can't change what you can't see. What you'll discover is that the pattern is everywhere. It's not occasional. It's constant. You're constantly choosing chaos in small ways that add up to a chaotic life. The way you pack your schedule with no buffer time, the way you stay in conversations that drain you, the way you scroll social media when you could be resting, the way you ruminate on problems instead of solving them, the way you create urgency around things that aren't urgent, the way you avoid being alone with your thoughts by filling every moment with noise. Once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it, and that's both liberating and terrifying. The next step is interruption. Once you've seen the pattern, you start interrupting it. Not every time. You're not trying to be perfect, but sometimes, just sometimes, someone texts you with drama, and instead of immediately engaging, you wait. You give yourself 5 minutes. You ask yourself if this is your problem to solve. You notice the pull to jump in, and you resist it. That's interruption. You're about to say yes to something you don't want to do, and you pause. You feel the discomfort of potentially disappointing someone, and you say no anyway. That's interruption. You're scrolling mindlessly and you catch yourself and you put the phone down. That's interruption. Each interruption is small, but interruptions accumulate, and over time they create space. Space between stimulus and response. Space between impulse and action. Space where you can choose differently. This is where freedom lives. Not in some grand transformation where you suddenly become a different person, but in these small moments of choice where you override the automatic pattern and do something new. It feels awkward at first. It feels wrong. Your nervous system protests. Your identity protests. The people in your life protest. But you do it anyway, because you're finally more committed to peace than to the familiar pattern of chaos. Now here's what happens when you start interrupting the chaos. Everything gets quiet, and the quiet is unbearable. Because in the quiet, everything you've been avoiding rises to the surface. The grief, the loneliness, the fear, the inadequacy, the rage, the sadness, all of it. And your first instinct will be to create chaos. Again, to fill the space, to distract yourself, to run back to what's familiar. This is the critical moment. This is where most people fail. They get a glimpse of what they've been avoiding and they decide they're not ready and they return to chaos and they convince themselves they tried, but peace just isn't for them. But Jung would tell you that this moment, this unbearable moment of confronting what's underneath, is the entire point. This is where the real work happens, not in understanding why you're addicted to chaos. That's important, but it's not sufficient. The real work is feeling what you've been avoiding. Not thinking about it, not analyzing it, feeling it, sitting with it, letting it move through you without trying to fix it or suppress it or distract from it. This is how you metabolize what's been stored in your body. This is how you clear the backlog. This is how you finally heal instead of just coping, and it's brutal. There's no other word for it. You're going to feel things you've spent years avoiding. You're going to cry for reasons you can't articulate. You're going to rage at people who aren't even in your life anymore. You're going to feel waves of grief that seem to come from nowhere. You're going to sit in your apartment on a Saturday night with nothing to do and no one to save, and you're going to feel the most profound loneliness you've ever experienced. And you're going to want to run. You're going to want to text your ex or start a fight with a friend or book your entire week so you don't have to feel this ever again. Don't run. This is the work. This is what you've been protecting yourself from with all the chaos. And yes, it hurts, but it's not going to kill you. It's going to free you. Because on the other side of feeling everything you've been avoiding is actual peace, not the fantasy version, the real version. The version where you're not constantly bracing for the next disaster because you've finally processed the last one. The version where you can sit in silence without your mind immediately creating problems to solve. The version where you don't need chaos to feel alive, because you've remembered how to feel alive in stillness. This is what Jung meant by integration, not peace. It's the absence of chaos, but peace as the result of facing what chaos was protecting you from. You integrate the shadow. You acknowledge what you've been denying. You feel what you've been suppressing. And in doing so, you reclaim the energy that was being used to maintain the chaos. That energy becomes available for creation instead of crisis, for growth instead of survival, for living instead of just getting through. But integration isn't a one-time event. It's a practice. You're going to slip back into chaos. You're going to catch yourself manufacturing drama. You're going to have moments where the addiction roars back and you find yourself right in the middle of a situation you swore you'd never engage with again. And that's okay. That's normal. That's part of the process. The difference is that now you'll see it faster. You'll recognize the pattern sooner. You'll be able to course correct instead of staying stuck. And gradually, over time, the chaos becomes the exception instead of the rule. Peace becomes your baseline instead of your fantasy. So here's what I need you to understand. Peace isn't something you achieve. It's something you choose every single day, in every single moment. You choose it when you say no to drama. You choose it when you set a boundary. You choose it when you let someone be wrong without correcting them. You choose it when you allow silence instead of filling it. You choose it when you feel uncomfortable feelings instead of creating distractions. You choose it when you rest instead of manufacturing urgency. These choices feel small. They feel insignificant, but they're revolutionary. They're how you break the addiction. And yes, some people will be confused by the new you. The you that doesn't engage with every argument. The you that isn't available for every crisis. The you that has energy left at the end of the day because you're not spending it all on chaos. They'll accuse you of not caring, of being distant, of changing. And they're right. You are changing. You're becoming someone who values peace more than performance. Someone who protects their energy more than their image. Someone who chooses themselves more than chaos. And not everyone will understand that. Not everyone needs to. Jung said, individuation requires you to separate from the collective, to stop living according to patterns that aren't yours, to build a life based on your actual values instead of inherited ones. And if chaos has been your pattern, breaking free from it is an act of individuation. You're saying, I'm not going to live like this anymore. I'm not going to mistake intensity for aliveness. I'm not going to confuse busyness with purpose. I'm not going to sacrifice peace for the familiar comfort of crisis. You're choosing something different, something that requires courage, something that requires consciousness, something that most people will never choose because it's too uncomfortable. But you're not most people. You're here. You're reading this. You're considering the possibility that everything you've been telling yourself about, wanting peace while choosing chaos, is true. And consideration is the first step. The next step is yours. You can close this and go back to the patterns, or you can stay conscious. You can observe. You can interrupt. You can feel. You can choose. The chaos will still be available. It always is. But so is peace. And for the first time maybe in your entire life, you get to decide which one you actually want. If this cracked something open, subscribe, because we're going into the uncomfortable truths that change everything. The patterns you can't unsee once you see them. The choices you can't unchoose once you make them. This is depth psychology. This is Jung's work. This is the real journey. Like this video, if you're choosing peace over chaos, comment 1, pattern you're interrupting, starting now. And remember, you were never addicted to the chaos itself. You were addicted to avoiding what the chaos was protecting you from. And now you know. So now you choose. Peace or pattern. Consciousness or compulsion. Freedom or familiar. The choice has always been yours. And it still is.